Hey all, a new day, new verses. We continue on into Jacob, or James. I know it's been a minute, but it was an opportunity to really dig into what the word looks like and the opportunity to walk it out, because that's the important part, isn't it? Let our lives be always speaking and when necessary words. And so it may be a minute of posting, but it was the opportunity to dig into it. And it's part of what led me today to want to do verses 21 and what I'm going to call 22a. A little first half of it there, but let's get into it and I think you'll see what I mean. Here we go. Chapter 2, for the record. Don't you remember that our ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his actions when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see, his faith and his actions work together. And that's where I want to kind of cut it off for a minute, because it does finish out the verse of his actions made his faith complete. What I want to talk about, though, and I'm going to put the playlist on Hanging with Abe at the end of this, because I want to talk about Abraham here. I want to talk about the fact that, Abraham, we will see, is described as righteous by faith, is even called a friend of God. But it's really easy to say that in Jacob. And it's really nice to be able to just go right to the end punch there. He's called a friend of God. He's made righteous by faith. Yes, absolutely true. But in doing that, it's really easy to forget the context of how he got there. It's really easy to forget the trials and the storms and the struggles that Abraham suffered through, sometimes from the exterior and sometimes from the interior. And a lot of his problems were self-inflicted. Abraham, go to this place, leave your family and your possessions, go where I told you. He brought his stuff and Lot. And of course, Lot led to Moab and that whole struggle there with the Moabites. Yet God worked for his good because Ruth was a Moabite. And if Abraham hadn't brought Lot, Ruth wouldn't have been around. So there is God taking what the enemy means for evil and using it for good, where the human side of us decides not to listen and God works it to his good anyway. Abraham with the going into the different kingdoms, the different areas. Well, don't say you're my wife because they'll kill me in order to get to you. But say you're my sister instead. It's not technically lying. Oh, yay, technicality. Woo. In doing so, how many times did Abraham get the response of, what are you doing? What curse is this you brought upon us? Why have you done this? He did it to the Egyptians. He did it, I believe it was to the Medes as well. But constantly in his life, he had those moments. And this is the beautiful part that I want to get at. Okay, before I keep going down the list of Abraham's whoopses, because I'm not condemning Abraham. I'm not judging Abraham. I want to get to the point that when we whoops, God is not condemning us. What does John say quite beautifully, and I believe it's 8, verse 14? Somewhere in there. That if we listen to what Jesus says and don't do it, he doesn't condemn us. Because he came to the world to save it, not condemn it. That if we ignore him entirely, walk away from his teachings, walk away from his doing it, that's when we're in deep trouble. At that point, though, we're already dead. We were dead and just didn't know it. I find it interesting that we worry about the zombie apocalypse and pulp culture, and without realizing we're in the middle of one already. We're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse of people who are obsessed with the moment of food, shelter, clothes, prestige, title, position, begging for the brains that we're not really showing. Because we're wanting the world's okay. But we don't need the world's okay. And to be perfectly honest, why would we want an okay that it can take away at any moment? Fame is a fickle thing, after all. So why would we want to play by the world's game? The word we have in the word, the world didn't give it. The world can't take it away. Jesus is the one who gives us joy and new life and real freedom. Because he gives it, the world cannot take it away. The screw-ups cannot take it away. The successes cannot take it away. How we live is important. But God doesn't judge us for trying. In fact, he loves us. He loves us so much. And so for him trying, even when we mess up, is still doing. It's why Jacob here just yada yadas in a lot of ways past everything that Abraham did as a whoops. See, I want to dig into it for a place of encouragement. For if you're dealing with those places of struggle and trial, and God, how am I supposed to do this? Or God, I keep screwing up, I keep messing up, I keep failing. Well, I have good news for you. God knows. God knows that we fail. In fact, the word sin is to fail. That's where it comes in. In fact, that's the reason with the Benjamites and Kings when it was said that they could sling a stone and not miss a hair. Little bug. That they would not sin because they would not miss. They wouldn't fail. They would hit what they were aiming at. And despite the fact that they were really, really deep in sin, well, they were doing just that. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by an adorable little bug on my glasses. But it makes me think about just how precious life is, how beautiful it is. Abraham is declared righteous not because he got it right, but after 120 years, it finally sank in. So when God covered him and got Lot out of Sodom before God destroyed it, when God covered him with regards to Pharaoh, when God covered Isaac, who is technically his firstborn, not by Sarah, but is his firstborn by Hagar. And when Sarah casts Hagar out and when all of these horrible things happen, God still intervenes. In fact, El Roy, if memory serves, is from Hagar, the God who sees me. Because he did. And he does. He sees you. He sees me. He sees where sometimes we will be in struggles and trials that aren't of our own circumstances, aren't of our own making. But they're in situations where we're stuck. You know, it's a difficult time. It's a difficult season. This time sucks. This moment is agonizing. What did I do to get myself here? Sometimes we didn't have anything to do with it. Sometimes that's just the way it plays out. The question is, who are we going to trust? Because after 120 years, Abraham, by the time he's taking Isaac up there to sacrifice, he's seen enough, experienced enough that he can say, well, God will provide the lamb. Well, the servants can stay here because it needs to be those who are ready for it, who are ready for this miracle. Because it was faith that came about because of enough experience, enough relationship, enough times where God has pulled him out of the fire, as he pulls us out of the fire, that he was able to say, no, I can do this. He'll either raise the dead or do something even beyond that I cannot fathom or imagine. But he'll do it because he said he would do it through this. Now, granted, it finally took Isaac being born to Sarah, who was in her 90s at the time, and him in his hundreds. He had to go through it to understand it. He had to go through the trials. He had to go through the difficulties. He had to go through the storm to understand that God would not leave him nor forsake him. And I know that even just that phrase, it's like, well, then why did Jesus say, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? Because he's starting off Psalm 22. It ends in victory. Because God will never be thwarted. The light is never going to be crushed by darkness. The darkness has never understood the light. And the darkness can't extinguish it, though. We're in a place, in these seasons, especially in this time, when it is really easy to give up. When it's really easy to want to quit. Where it's really easy to not want to try anymore. Because the world wants us to give. It wants us to take our ball and go home. And a reductive version of it, sometimes that's kind of thing. But it wants us to do that on a spiritual level and an emotional level. Because if you can kill somebody emotionally, them walking around is actually better. Because then they'll start destroying and damaging. The Walking Dead will continually consume the Walking Dead, trying to lead zombie to zombie to zombie. We're called to live differently. Because we're in it. We're not of it. So the rules, the human's world's way of doing it, don't apply to us. You know, how does it know? They don't apply. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very top of it is that self-actualization. We start there by base. The questions about the lower parts of the pyramid, food, places to rest your head, etc., Jesus himself says those are the concerns of the Goyim, those who do not understand him. Those are the questions of those who do not have faith. So why would we need to play that game? Why would we need to do it that way when we're specifically told that's how we're not supposed to? Abraham is declared righteous by faith, his actions combining with his faith working together so that he does what he was told to do. Sacrifice your son Isaac. Well, I'm going to do it because I was told. Well, how can you do it because you were told? Well, because he saved my sorry tuchus from the fire here and here. And he watched over Hagar and Ishmael. And he watched over here and here and here and here and here and here and here. So I guess this one, instead of arguing, I'm just going to try and, for once, listen. It's obedience. It's obedience to God's way of doing it. And sometimes his way of doing it is confusing. You know, God, why would you have me go through these trials? Why would you have me go through these storms? Why would you have me deal with a constant barrage of asshole? Because you can speak their language and lead them out of it. Because I'm giving you the peace and the strength to be able to bear it. But I don't want to bear it. When does that have to apply to anything? I vaguely remember Jesus straight up saying, Father, if this cup can be taken away from me, do it. Yet your will, not mine, be done. So when we're in those trials, why do we not just pray, okay, Lord, this cup sucketh. Will you taketh this cup of sucketh? And if not, help me drink it. Help me endure it. Help me do this so that I can praise. Because I don't want to be like Job's life where I just say, curse God and die and be done with it. I want to praise. I want to praise through the trials. I want to praise through the storms. I want to praise because he's worthy of praise. You know, Bamidbar, the wilderness, the reason they got in so much trouble is because constant, time and time again, manna from heaven, water from rocks, quail even when they complained. God is still providing constantly. But there's never a thank you. There's no sign of hope or joy or happiness or gratitude. There's no sign of anything other than just wanting to give. Wanting to hold to him is the way we want to look at it. He's the one who gives us the strength to get through. If we really believe that, why don't we act on it? You know, because it's all well and good to talk about the fact that Abraham was shown right by God by his actions when he offered Isaac on the altar. He did. His faith and his actions did work together. The two of them combined to make his faith complete. Because he was able to walk out. And he was able to walk out those trying places because he remembered that God is true. It's something we need to remember too. So when you're in the trial, when you're in the storm, when you're facing a barrage of pain and agony and suffering, remember that he bore it first. We don't have to walk around solemn and dejected and, oh, why is me? Why bother? I give, I quit. Okay, but you're not the one who gets to choose that option. None of us are. You're not, I'm not. We don't get to choose when to give. We don't get to choose when we go home. He does that. No. It's a place of trust. It's a place of rest, and it's a place of remembering that when we screw up, he'll use it for our good and his glory. Joseph, at the very end of Genesis, talking to his brothers, Abraham's grandson, actually great-grandson, my apologies, Abraham's great-grandson, God used it for good. Talking to his brothers, what you meant for evil, God used it for his good. And that's the trick. That's the rub. Are we going to believe that he'll use it for our good? Will we believe that he is greater than the circumstances, than the situations, than the trials? Are we going to walk by faith? Because sometimes the walking it out, sometimes the action is forgiveness. Sometimes the action is mercy. Sometimes the action is kindness. Sometimes the action is saying, I really don't like you in any way, shape, or form. But I will love you. I will agape love you because God has shown me what love really is. That's the question. Because the reason Abraham could offer up Isaac on the altar was because he spent enough time seeing God be true to his character that he could finally let go of his conceptions about all of it, about the very reality of the action. Was it easy? No. But when has life ever been easy? Did it make sense to those who do not understand? No. But where in the Word does it say that you'll understand it if you're outside of it? In fact, I've found it to be quite the opposite true in the Word. Where in the Word does it say that it's all peaches and cream as soon as you get saved? In fact, if memory serves, then Jesus himself says, if you follow me, it's going to suck. But the part of you that is going to get lost, the part of you that is going to die, is the part of you that wasn't you to begin with. Your scars, your anger, the ambitions that try and put other human beings below you. Oh, and then you don't have aspirations? I didn't say no aspirations. I said no ambitions, in the sense of putting other people under you. We don't have to play the world's game. And personally, I find it a disgusting one anyway. If you're in the same bark, please let me know, because the way the world does it is painful. The way the world does it is agonizing. And it will only lead to more death when you do it that way. Well, I have to get to the top of the rung. Okay, but what happens when that job disappears? Well, I made it to CEO of the company, or I made it to this level of the company. Cool, what happens when the company gets bought out and you get fired? The world will give you things that it can take away. Carrot, stick. God doesn't make those kind of promises. God promises life and life everlasting. He also says that if you want to find your life, you're going to have to lose it. He also says if you want to live, you're going to have to die to yourself. He's very straightforward about these things. I find myself wondering, why don't we actually believe him, though? Why don't we believe him when he says that the suck is there, and it will come, but he'll see us through? Why do we believe / behave as though God can no longer part waters? As though by his grace we can't walk on water? Why do we behave as though God stopped being all-powerful? And I would argue it's because when you're in those places, maybe you don't really believe that he is. Because if you believe in your heart and you know that God is all-powerful and that God will see to it, then remember he collects those tears, he counts them, he knows them. And he's not going to condemn you for crying. He wants you to cry in his arms so he can hold you. There's a reason it's Abba, Father, akin to Daddy, a term of great endearment and love. Because he loves us so. That love, that understanding that God would see to it and make a way is why Abraham was able to do what he did with Isaac. The reason he is called righteous by faith, the reason he's called a friend of God, is because he decided he was done doing it his way. Just the once. And what a once it is. Isn't it amazing how God will yada yada over the places where we screw up because he wants us so much? Sin is a real thing. It's a bad thing, and it's why Jesus died for us. That punishment so that we don't have to play by that set of rules anymore. We're no longer trying to climb up to heaven to find God or down in the depths of the pits to find him. He's right here, as near as the heart in our chest and as close as the skin on our body. And he wants an intimate relationship. And a lot of times that intimate relationship means letting go of our perceived way of doing it and loving a little more instead. Trusting Him a little more instead. Because I'm not saying put your trust in people. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. Put your trust in God. Trust that He'll put the people in your life in the season that He has for you. And then rest that He is king over it. Because the rest leads to worry. And Jesus said not to do that. A lot of the rest leads to fear. And the Word says the perfect love casts out all fear. So what have we to be afraid of? When you can get to that kind of intimate relationship and intimate peace and intimate understanding, the binding of Isaac is not only logical, it's walking out what you were told to do. When you see somebody in need and say, well, I know I don't have anything to my name, and I just found this bit of money, and God said to give it to, okay. Well, because He dresses the lilies with beauty and splendor, so why shouldn't I just walk out in faith and trust? That's the beauty of it right there. Faith and trust. Because when you walk it out, there's that action. When you walk out that faith, when you walk out the changes of character He's doing in you, it'll change the world. You just got to let Him do it. Because He'll do it through you. And that's pretty much it. Let Him do it. Let Him direct your steps. Let Him be in the driver's seat. Because it doesn't work when we do it. We generally cause on purposes and call them accidents. We generally cause harm and foul. Even when we don't mean to. Because we don't have enough information to do it right. He does. So let's let Him lead. And we follow. But hey, isn't that exactly what it's supposed to look like to begin with? Anyway, I will leave you now with the last bit of Hebrews 13:20 through 21, because it keeps popping up, and coincidence is just God choosing to remain anonymous. So may the God of peace, who brought up from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, and ratified an eternal covenant with His blood, may He equip you with all you need for doing His will. May He produce in you, through the power of Jesus Christ, every good thing that is pleasing to Him. All glory to Him, forever and ever. Amen. I'll see you next time as we continue on with 22b, and probably into chapter 3. I'll see you guys then. May His favor be upon you. Know that you are loved, and don't give up hope. Because God will see you through. You just got to trust Him to be God. Because we can't be. Because we're not. I'll see you then.